Inflation today is at its decade high. Every time you turn on the news, the discussions are centered on the rising prices and increased living standards everywhere. And even when you go to the groceries, you'll really feel how inflation is affecting our consumer market nowadays. Prices are way higher than they were years and even just months ago. And some well-known financial experts are beginning to worry about this. In fact, some of them have already issued warnings that things could probably go worse than they are now. In today's video, we'll discuss Charlie Munger and what he thinks about the current financial situation. Stay tuned because we will discuss why he thinks we're on the brink of catastrophe and what this will mean for ordinary consumers such as you. So make sure to watch this video to the end. This is Financial Intellect, where we promote that to be finance savvy, we are your buddy. Now let's get right into the video. Warren Buffett's longtime business partner and vice chair of Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, issued a grave warning about inflation, calling rising prices the second biggest threat after the nuclear war. The term inflation may be among the most well-known in the economic world, and in the past, it has plunged several nations into a long period of unrest and instability. This is why many central bankers aim to be inflation hawks, advocating that monetary policies should be centered around keeping inflation low. Even many politicians are also making every effort to stop inflation as well. Inflation is such a serious issue that in 1974, while Gerald Ford was president, it was even dubbed as the nation's top public enemy. But what is inflation exactly, and why is it so important? In essence, inflation is the rate of price growth during a given time period. It is sometimes seen as a broad indicator that covers the overall rise in prices or increased living standards across the nation. However, it can also be quantified more specifically, such as the rise in the cost of certain goods or services, like the rising price of gas. Whatever the situation, inflation shows how much more costly a particular set of goods and/or services have gotten over a specific period of time. It can also be defined as a decline in the purchasing power of your money. The issue at hand is that there is a relatively high demand for products and services, but a shortage in supply due to issues with the supply chain. This is what mainly led to the increase in prices. However, it worsened when the Federal Reserve continually printed new money. In fact, since February 2020, the Fed has printed around $4.72 trillion, and as a result, inflation shot up. The projected increase in the inflation rate per year is only around 2%, but data shows that in April 2022, the United States surpassed the projected inflation ceiling when the country reached an 8.3% inflation rate. If this continues, the Fed will probably need to intervene soon by raising interest rates in order to slow the economy and bring inflation under control. And this is what is happening today. Now let's turn to Charlie Munger and his opinion on inflation. In Charlie's most recent interview, the financial market is shaken by his comments when he said that the United States has done something quite extreme and things would go bad. Maybe much worse than what happened to Japan or something similar. Charlie is making a reference to the fact that more than 40% of all US dollars circulating today were actually printed only since February of 2020. And this continuous printing of money out of thin air will ultimately lead to inflation. The current inflation rate in the US today is at a 40-year high of 8.3%. And although it only says 8.3%, in actuality, the rate may be significantly way higher than that. The figure may be readily altered to prevent people from throwing stones at the institutions in charge. Remember that we pay the inflation tax each time we fuel up at the petrol station or visit the grocery store. Small taxes don't bother us, but extra taxes of 7 to 15% are already alarming. Over the past decades, the financial sector was able to keep the situation quiet by using market complexity to confuse most people. But with the growing presence of social media, such as Twitter, many were able to interpret the financial jargon spoken by the men in suits. Keep in mind that as inflation increases, your purchasing power will also diminish. The reference to Japan. Charlie uses the example of Japan to show the potential consequences of reckless money printing by governments and central banks. In the 1990s, Japan's good fortune ran out, and by 2001, the value of both stocks and land had fallen by around 60 to 70% respectively. The government and central bank made an effort to address the issue by repurchasing a large number of common stocks in addition to their own debt. It was a period when interest rates were sharply increased and enormous sums of money were continually printed to supposedly help the economy recover. Due to the government controlling a sizable percentage of what, by definition, should have been free markets, what resulted is a period of no economic progress. Japan has never really recovered since this economic catastrophe. However, even though Japan made mistakes, it is still a beautiful nation. Because weapons are outlawed, unlike in the US, there are no riots in the streets, no business issues, and generally, citizens are happy and don't kill each other. Japan did not experience severe consequences despite the abundance of free money printed out in the market. So you shouldn't really trust the majority of financial gurus that claim that the financial markets are doomed because of continuous money printing. History demonstrates that even when nations make bad choices, life goes on. With the most recent financial issues, Charlie thinks that we have no idea to what extent the United States will be affected. The US already printed trillions of dollars, almost similar to what Japan did. But the fundamental question right now is, how will the Americans respond? Will they remain silent like the people of Japan, or will they take the fight to the streets, causing riots and civil unrest? Inflation of 15% was already noted in the 1970s. This has caused a devastating recession that affected a lot of individuals. Good news is, Charlie thinks that it will be difficult for this to occur again this time. Politicians now have far more control over financial markets than they had in the past, and they'll probably stop a recession like the one in the 1970s from happening again. Reckless and continuous money printing is risky. Charlie believed that the current problems we have now will likely differ from what happened in Japan. And since the catastrophe may still be far off, supply chain problems and price increases may still have enough time to go down. But if the next inflation figures will be higher than 8.3%, then it is in the Federal Reserve's best interest to refrain from overreacting and raising rates too quickly, just as Japan did. As we witnessed in 2020, we already know that the Fed is capable of being trigger-happy. In an effort to curb inflation in the 1970s, Paul Volcker, the then president of the Federal Reserve, raised the interest rates to 20%. This outraged a lot of people, but Charlie warned that if things continue to go as they are now, then we're probably going to experience inflation that is way worse than what we had in the 1970s. Charlie thinks that the situation could be worse now than they were back in the 1970s, and there is no exception for the rest of the world. Every time the United States faces economic issues, every other nation in the world is also affected, since the majority of them have also printed excessive amounts of money and dropped their interest rates to almost zero. So most likely, interest rates will increase soon, and if they raise too high, the economy could fall. But if prices don't rise quickly enough too, then high inflation will follow. What will this mean for you? Regardless of whether you invest your money or not, you should always keep an eye on the world economy. The inflation of 8.3% makes it difficult to maintain a cash budget. Even investors like Charlie publicly state that this madness cannot continue, and stock market crashes are still extremely likely to occur. And during these times, Charlie's mental model is to select the choice that is least undesirable in such circumstances. Charlie has only 4 stocks and some real estate in his portfolio, and according to him, the majority of people diversify way too much when all they truly need are only 4 solid investments. We are living in an uncertain period in history. Nobody can predict what will occur next. Japan demonstrates that anything is possible, but the likelihood of problems is increased when a trigger-happy leadership controls the financial markets. And one sign of this is when people of great credibility are continually printing money out of thin air, just like what is happening today. And those are Charlie Munger's thoughts and warnings about our economy today. What do you think? Do you agree with his opinion on inflation and the possible catastrophe that may follow? Let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And with that, Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you've watched, stay tuned for more videos. Bye, financial buddies!